the time to welcome you all to the Rotary Club of West Pine Bluff's fourth annual Hooten'S Arkansas football.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence and coming out and enjoying a good program by Hooten'S Arkansas football. And you know, as we get excited this time of the year, we start talking about football. Of course, we're a little spoiled here in southeast Arkansas, but statewide, a lot of exciting things going on, so a good opportunity to come together. I need to start out initially by thanking the programs that have joined us. We'll hear a little bit more from each of those maybe a little bit later. Our sponsors, the Rotarians that are present, our media representatives, always a pleasure to have you, so thank you very, very much for being here. Now, our agenda for the day is I'm going to introduce Barry, and he's going to talk football with you. We'll have a period of time for questions, if you've got some of those that he said he would be glad to take. And then at the end, maybe we'll have a little bit of time for each program to introduce themselves and say a little bit about their program. We have Wes Moore and his radio program going on in the sunroom. If you haven't been tapped on the shoulder and asked if you'd like to participate in that, don't be surprised. And it is kind of interactive. It may happen during our program, but that would be okay too. We're privileged. This is our fourth annual program, and we have invited Hooten'S, and we've invited guests from Southeast Arkansas high school and college programs. I think we invite probably 30 programs, and we know that not all the schools have the opportunity to participate and come the distances, or they're in camps. I know Whitehall High School's got a camp going on this morning, and so there were some schools that couldn't participate because of that. But we're very proud to have Barry Grooms. This is the fourth year. He's a 1993 graduate of Sheridan High School, 1997 graduate of Arkansas State University. He's been with Hooten'S Arkansas football for 20 years, married and 4 children, and a great advocate for football in the state of Arkansas. Please give a warm Rotary welcome to Barry Grooms.
Well, it's an honor to be back and asked to speak again, and when Rotary clubs continue to invite you back, it is a good feeling. I've only been kicked out of 1 or 2 Rotary clubs, but Stuttgart did let me back in last year for the first time in a long time, so I get to go back there next week. But Roy had asked me earlier how many Rotary clubs and speaking engagements I do throughout from the summer through early fall and getting ready for football season. It's upwards to 20. I'll do 8 to 10 Rotary clubs, a Lions Club event, other clubs, Aquinas clubs, and different organizations have me in to speak to them. I've been to speak to individual teams, and even churches have had me in to speak. But so if I say something to offend you today, I didn't mean to, and I don't try to specify coaches, because I'll miss somebody, leave somebody out, or say something about them. But again, I'm with Hooten'S Arkansas Football Magazine. I've been there for 20 years. You know, there's some that every time I do a speaking engagement, I start off by saying who we are and what we are at Hooten'S Arkansas Football, because I find there are people who aren't familiar with us, and I've been there for 20 years, so I know the ins and outs of it, and yet there's some who don't know what it is. But this is Hooten'S Arkansas Football Magazine, 26th year of publication for it. We also do a television show that focuses on college and high school football in the state, that airs Saturday mornings on Channel 7 during the football season as a prelude into the SEC games and whatever else is coming on. We're at 10:30 a.m. We have various radio shows that we do. We produce one ourselves that gives the picks and talks about each and every high school game in the state, and that's carried by 40 plus radio stations throughout the state. And then I'm on with a radio station in Little Rock, 103.7 The Buzz, and I've been there for 19 years doing a show on Friday afternoons, kind of a pregame show, if you will, and we give picks and talk about it, and then we come back and have a show for 2 hours at night, the scoreboard show, and we'll have coaches from around the state call in and give the scores and kind of a little bit of quick analysis and what this game meant, what that win meant. But again, I owe it all through Hooten'S Arkansas football, and how I got started and wound up there is an interesting story itself. After graduating Arkansas State in 1997, I was in the sports information field there. I worked with Gina Bowman, was the SID there at the time, and worked in sports information. Had 2 opportunities to continue sports information. One was with Ole Miss, the other with Texas A&M. But instead of going to Texas A&M at College Station, I went to Kingsville, Texas, and worked there with Coach Harms for a while, and learned a lot about Division II football, and really got entrenched in it there, and made it to the quarterfinals of the Division II playoffs. Thought we were going to win it all that year, and we didn't. And that was among the more heartbreaking things I'd been involved in. And then had the opportunity to move back into the state, and I worked in journalism field for just wasn't even a couple of months at Hot Springs before I took on the full-time job with Hooten'S Arkansas football, and I've been there for 20 years. We start in January, and actually I could trace it back. It's just a never-ending cycle, but we'll start with January. We call each and every high school coach in the state. We have a guy who works for us who calls each and every college in the state, interviews those coaches once or twice during the spring to get all the information to put it together. We write each and every story, edit it, lay out the page. We have to chase every photo, and it takes from January to early or mid-June before we can get it all together, wrap it up, go to the press. It's turned around within a week at the printers. We start delivering our magazines the very next week. We deliver them ourselves, and I was not with the company when it happened, but they had somebody, got them into Walmart, said we can get you there, and but before they ever got there, and it was a distribution company, and they said had they not been well established and just had 2 employees, it would have sunk them. But so we learned that distributing the magazines ourselves is a much better way to sell magazines and to cut down on cost. During the fall, one of the things we do that takes up my summer, and then September and early October are pretty busy, and we're producing again that radio show, TV show. We give weekly rankings and predictions, which are carried by various newspapers throughout the state, and also on Hooten'S.com. And on Hooten'S.com, we also have video that we go out and shoot every Friday night, and we'll have video of upward to 15 to 20 games throughout the state that you can go watch. And to me, it doesn't mean anything, but I was surprised at the number of people I talked to, and even kids who don't play football, who said, man, I've got a computer class Monday morning. The first thing I do is get on your website, and I start looking for the games just around the state, just to watch and see, just to see some football action, just to see what happens. So, everybody's got a little different niche that they like, and that's become one. Then we do an end-of-the-year awards banquet. Several coaches from around here have been invited to that, and had players invited and honored, where we take 3 from each classification on offense and defense, and 3 coaches, and we give a player of the year in each classification. And a coach of the year, and I think a lot of the coaches around here are familiar with that and have been able to be a part of it. Also, throughout the fall, what we're doing is we're archiving. One of my main jobs is I go to the Central Arkansas Library System, and I gather every newspaper from all over the state, bring it back to the office, and spend 1 to 2 days clipping, and we put it in files. And we've got files on every team in the state dating back to 1992. So we have people call and say, hey, could you look up the score in 1996 when Clarendon played Marvel, and tell me who won, and that game went in overtime, who scored? We can dig it up in our archives. And we have people who do that, who will call us from time to time wanting proof or wanting verification on something. So we're proud of that. It doesn't mean anything to anybody else, but it's just stacks and stacks of file cabinets there with every game just about the state documented for now 27 years of that. This year's magazine, 432 pages, on sale locally at Walmart, Brookshire's, Walgreens. Get out and get a copy. The one thing, this is one of our covers. We have various covers. Some of them have local colleges on the cover. Others have some high schools on the cover. And this is the statewide edition, though, the one that goes out to the most people, and it features the new coach at the University of Arkansas, Coach Chad Morris. And I'll talk about him a little bit here, and talk about the Razorbacks, talk about state colleges, and get into the high schools. And I'll start right there with the high schools, though. That has been our bread and butter. The very first edition of Hooten'S Arkansas football was just high school edition. And I think various consultants and other people told them you're missing a huge market when you don't include colleges. And in this state, if you throw a Razorback on it, it sells. So we learned that very quickly in the business world. This year in Class 7A, our pick is North Little Rock to repeat as champion. Bryant also should be very good as far as, and then Bentonville and Bentonville West. In Class 6A, Coach Bowling, probably not a big fan of ours right now. We have the Zebras #1 in the state to start the season. Feel they've got a very good shot at making it back to Little Rock and playing for and winning a state championship. In 5A, we picked Pulaski Academy, and I've had other people say, man, they lose 9 starters on each side of the ball. How can you pick them? But until a 5A team, at least in the state, can beat them, I think you've got to pick them. And in 4A, it's a Southeast Arkansas team we went with, of course. The Warren Lumberjacks, loaded with skill players, and one of them's Traylon Burks. And if you haven't had a chance to get out and see him play, I urge you to do so. Looks like a guy possibly should be in the NFL here in a couple of years. He may be. I was asked this the other day, who is the best high school player you've seen? A few years ago, there was an argument, people saying that McTelvin Agim from Hope could do that. He was a great high school player, but he just wasn't quite dynamic as, you know, the 2 players right now. It of course goes back to Basile Shabazz with most people. And then can Traylon Burks eclipse that, or is it Jerry Eckwood at Brinkley? Who's the best? And we're starting to get that, and Traylon Burks is being mentioned in the same breath as those 2 guys, and that just shows you the kind of respect he's gaining from coaches around the state and recruiters, recruiting analysts, and whatever. So we picked Warren in 3A, or in 4A and 3A, went with Glen Rose to win. They're loaded with speed, and a really good quarterback who grew up in Star City, has moved to Glen Rose. And in 2A, went with Foreman to repeat as state champion. And again, they've got a dynamic player in Kyron Beatty, a running back. I think he went to the University of Arkansas camp between his sophomore and junior year, was clocked at a 4.3. They asked him to run it again, didn't believe it. He was laser timed at 4.3 again. That just shows you the kind of speed he has, and he kind of took over that Class 2A state title game last year. So that's just kind of a few of the highlights of the teams we've got. And again, I'm not going to get in each and every team, but when I open it up for questions, feel more than free to ask any question you want to about any conference or anything. And I may have to refer back to my magazine, but hopefully that'll be all right. College ranks will start, new day at UAPB, looking to build. It's been a rough 5-year period here, so it's got to be a lot of groundwork, I know, coming in, and recruiting wise, got to start locally and then expand out, and I fully expect that to happen. And when you start talking about the Gulf South, proved itself last year, Coach, you can verify it, but in the playoffs, to have 2 Arkansas teams in the playoffs and then Harding come within what people thought could win it. So it's a very tough league, and UAM's loaded on the offensive side of the ball. I know, got to feel good about that, Coach and Chip. And defensively, I guess, will just be the question. And if the defense rolls around, can make them run at a winning season. Arkansas State, when we start talking about where the state colleges are. Right now, Arkansas State, their preseason publications come out. Phil Steele, I know all the national media guys really get behind Phil Steele in his magazine, and he picked them 25th in the nation. There was a time where they were always going to be dead last in their conference, whatever conference that would be, before really Coach Roberts got there and started laying the groundwork to build this program up. And then it went through the cycle of back-to-back coaches from Hugh Freeze, Coach Malzahn to Harsin, and now that Blake Anderson's there, and I know he's interviewed several places, has never been offered those jobs. It's still a stepping stone job, but they've built it into a contender, a Sun Belt contender, and somebody who's on ESPN 3 to 4 times a year, and that's really helped their recruiting. You get to the Razorbacks, and everywhere I go, I'm always hounded with Razorback questions, people wanting to know about Coach Morris, what he is able and capable of doing. And we really, in this year's edition, I urge you to pick up a copy of it because I won't give away everything, but he goes back and he says he owes he wouldn't be at Arkansas today had he not had a losing season at 6-4 season rather at Stephenville, Texas, and almost get fired. Then he came in 2004, saw Springdale lose to Little Rock Central in the semifinals. But he got to meet Coach Malzahn, and he started dissecting the Springdale Bulldog offense at that time, the spread attack. So that kind of took his career off, and he says that took him to a different level, just watching other high schools from outside the state play, and that really enabled him to get to where he is today. People ask me about the cover. Couldn't we have chosen a more flattering picture of the coach? But this was taken, of course, at the spring game, where it's not spring, it's sleeting, snowing, below freezing temperatures, and kind of shows the grizzled look he has, and also what probably lies ahead this year. If I had to give a prediction, it would not be a winning record at Arkansas this year. I'll just leave it at that. But again, it's got to be, as any college coach can tell you, or a high school coach for that fact, it's got to be done through recruiting and built back up. And that's the problem that they face right now. Looking around at the state of high school football, there's a couple of interesting things that have come up. And if you're not in tune with it, you may not be aware, but 8-man football is going to be a club sport for the next 2 years. It could be very beneficial or detrimental to the state. We'll just have to see. I think it's going to be beneficial once it becomes a sanctioned AAA sport in 2 years. We'll be limited to, and coaches, y'all may correct me if I'm wrong, but it'll be limited to Class A and AA schools, maybe to get some of these schools out that have been just struggling with numbers. Maybe they'll be able to keep their programs afloat, have players come on and really develop, and possibly play some college football. I heard an interview with Marcus Spears earlier today through SEC Media Days, and I was not aware that he went to a 1A school in Louisiana, one of the smaller schools in that state. And then All-American at LSU, plays in the NFL for 6 or 7 years, and now is a big-time broadcaster. And he went to one of the smallest schools in Louisiana. So I think anytime you can have football, there should be some 1A and 2A schools who've been apprehensive about playing football because of the lack of numbers who want to join in the 8-man. And of course, it's a different game, different dimensions to the field. Everybody says it's really high scoring, fast paced, and it'll be fun to watch. And the AAA, again, is going to limit it to the Class A and AA schools. I know there's some 3A schools wanting to try it right now while it's still a club sport, but in 2 years they won't be allowed to do that, is my understanding. Another big thing is the 0 week that's come in, and what that means is now they've added an extra week to the season, but teams just have 10 games. They can't go to 11 regular season games. It's 10 games. They've got 3 games they can play over a 4-week span in the non-conference part of the season is what that means. And it opens up doors for those schools on the border, whether it's the Northeast, Northwest Arkansas teams or those in South Arkansas who had trouble finding the non-conference opponents. Opens up an extra week for them to get those teams from out of state, because Texas and Missouri, I know, always, in Oklahoma, have always started at least 1 to 2 weeks before the Arkansas schools. A few years ago, some Arkansas schools were playing Missouri teams in week 1, and it was the 3rd game for the Missouri teams. And they end their season well before Thanksgiving, or right at Thanksgiving time, and we always go a couple of weeks after that in the state. But that's what the 0 week is designed for. It creates a little more headache for coaches. Scheduling wise, to work around, but it gives you a little more flexibility maybe. And we'll just have to see where it goes, because it's something new, and every coach has a different opinion about it, whether it'll work or not. But it is something that's available for the next 2-year cycle at least. It'll probably be available hereafter, but it gives the average football fan a chance to get out and see another game. And hey, your team plays 0 week. That means you're going to be off one of the next 3 weeks, and you'll have a chance, if you want to sit at home on Friday night or go watch somebody else. For coaches, they can go scout an opponent or get ready and heal up. That's a big thing, getting players healthy again. Some of the more interesting things I've run into across the state. I mentioned Coach Malzahn earlier and his innovation, and we're invited to go some clinics with him. But Coach Barry Lunny Sr., who led Fort Smith Southside, was actually at Fordyce and then goes to BB and then to Fort Smith Southside and then to Bentonville and wins. I think he won 7 state championships, 6 or 7, and played for a couple of more. He was the forerunner on passing offenses, not only in the state, but also in the nation, because he was running the wing T through the mid-90s. He gets invited, and by 2000, he is speaking all over the country. And he, at that time, got Coach Malzahn, who had come from Hughes to Springdale, or Shiloh Christian, then to Springdale, to go with him and start giving these clinics. And they would go all over the country, from New Jersey to Las Vegas, giving coaching clinics to high school and college coaches. Then you had, as coaches, coaching clinics have kind of evolved, you even had your wing T and dead T type coaches going all over the nation in the state. Coach Don Phillips, I think he was renowned for the Delaware wing T. He would go give a seminar on that. He said 4 to 5 times a year to various states. So we've got some of the better coaches in the state who've been asked, by their credentials to speak elsewhere. And I think that bodes well, because when you start talking about high school football, as I mentioned with Coach Morris, Coach Malzahn, these guys working their way on up through the ranks, they translated into excellent college coaches. We can look at the Philadelphia Eagles, their coach 10 years ago, he's a high school coach. That's becoming more and more the trend, is to take really successful high school coaches who have that desire to put in an extra 60 hours a week or 50 hours a week and recruit. I think that's the thing that a lot of coaches neither love or hate. But the better X's and O's coaches are found in high schools, because what you have is, those 30 guys on your team or 70 guys, whatever's walking the hallway, and you get out, that's who you've got to work with. And that's a very sobering fact to some guys, and others, they embrace the chance every year to change their offense, to see what pieces of the puzzle can go here and there. And now with the advent of, I hate to say summer workouts, but Arkansas does have some of the more liberal summer football rules in the entire nation. I know in Texas, they used to not, and I don't think they still can. Can they play 7-on-7 with helmets? In Texas, they've got to go without helmets. And we've got team camps in the state of Arkansas that other coaches aren't familiar with. I've heard of a coach from Oklahoma said he drove over to watch one at Greenwood just to see what this team camp was, and it's where high school teams can pad up and gives the coaches a chance in June and July to see what they have and get them better prepared for what lies ahead in August, and to kind of get their team laid out. And these other states, they can have the guys come in, lift weights, and play some 7-on-7 without helmets, and that's still as far as they can go. So football's kind of evolved, even on the high school level in the state of Arkansas, into a full-time, year-round gig. I know my father-in-law and my uncle used to, they were basketball coaches, and then went to schools and that coached and had to help coach football, and it was still the old, you came in August, and it was 2-a-days, and you when school ended in May, you told the kids, see you back in August, and told them a date to report back. In fact, my father-in-law was on the staff of the 83 Jefferson Prep team that won the state championship. But they both got out of it, because when it became year-round, they can make a lot more money working somewhere else year-round than they could coaching. I think coaching had that allure. But the game has evolved in the state of Arkansas. We're some of the forerunners as far as things we've been able to do with a 0 week, with the advent of 8-man football. We've kind of lagged behind some of the other states as far as implementing these. I think it's the poster child in the NFL for 6 and 8-man football is Wes Welker, who played for the Broncos, the Patriots, various other teams, and a lot of good players that come from those smaller classifications. One of the things in closing here, before I open it up and take questions, is just remember, for not necessarily the coaches, but the fans out here, to get out and support the guys, and still remember that it's high school coaches, high school players, 99% are never going to put a pad on again after their high school careers are done. So get out and enjoy while you can. Don't boo them. You'd be surprised the number of games I go to. Every week you hear something, and it's about the coach, but it gets really bad when it's about the players. And just as most of you in this room are aware of, they're out there just for the love of the game. And at this time, I'd like to just open up the floor, take any questions you've got about high school or college football in the state. And some guy, there's a Rotary club I speak to in every year, I know, to be ready for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know why, but he asks me about the 49ers every year. So if you ask me about that, I may not be prepared.
If you were the head of the AAA, what one suggestion would you make to make football better for the students and the coaches and everyone?
Wouldn't get only one?
Well,
Only one.
More than one.
Boy, travel issue has been big for high schools and college. I know Pine Bluff's in the east and has to go to Jonesboro, West Memphis. And that trickles down to other sports, and I know they've tried to mesh the conferences, and I think that creates a bigger mess with basketball and baseball when you've got 6As playing 4As in other sports and 5As. There are a lot of coaches, especially at the smaller schools, who do not like that. So I would try to find a way and devise a way, come up with some other classification system. And I don't have an answer for that. That would be one of the first steps, though, I looked at. And it may not be done and be able to be done, but you'd think there's an answer there.
Hey, Barry, just compare been there 20 years now, you say, right? Mm-hmm. Compare the state of high school football from when you started there to today. Yeah. How do you think that just the overall game itself on the high school level, is it still strong as ever? And in light of some of the comments that the North Carolina coach has made in the last few days about football being under attack, do you see that trickling down from the high school level?
Unfortunately, it does. And boy, with the concussion protocol, I know parents who don't want their kids to play football. But I also know that what I've seen over 20 years is that the health care, the trainers, and the coaches are more educated on every aspect of the health of a football player. And I think that is very beneficial. That's one of the changes I've seen. Other changes I've seen have been just the implementation of it's year-round now, and I think the one thing the AAA did with that 2-week dead period, to where coaches and players can't have contact, and they've got to get away. It helps them. It helps them to get away. And you'd be surprised though at the number of parents I'll have say, "I've got to find something for him to do those 2 weeks." Let him be a kid would be my answer. But still, there's some parents who get more and more every year, get more and more so involved, and they want their child to specialize, whether it be football or basketball. The advent of AAU basketball, I think, has been, we've seen from probably in this state from the mid-'80s on to people specializing in sports. And, now in studies continue to show have your guys play more and more sports. What's it, the famous Urban Meyer statistic is 99% of the players, 95% of the players he signs were multi-sport guys in high school. So that's been another unfortunate thing that I've seen, is the number of players trying to specialize, and a lot of them being pushed by parents to specialize, not coaches, but parents.
Barry, I know you picked our Zebras to win. What do you like about Coach Bowden's team this year?
There's not much to... What do I like? Hey, they're starting over in a few places, but lineman-wise, they're pretty good. And you start looking at just 6A, who's been there? When you start talking tradition is overused in football, but there are a few schools that haven't. I know Coach Toddy at Rising, Coach Boulding, you have to feel when you step on the field that sometimes your players have that mental edge, that little bit of mental swagger over opponents that maybe you're not as talented as, but you've been there, you played for state championships, your guys expect to win. 6A, Greenwood, they lose another Division I quarterback. Can't see how they're going to be as good as they were last year. West Memphis could be a surprise team. Coach Elmore really likes his linemen, and he's got a really good running back and linebacker that he likes. They could be a surprise team. And I think in the East, Searcy could also be a surprise team. And of course, they lose a college quarterback as well.
With Whitehall and Watson Chapel moving to the 5A Central, we were just talking about that realignment there.
It's going to be tough. The South wasn't the strongest conference last year. Now you're moving into one that is so strong. And Coach Dutton can compliment those teams all day. It's, you're playing against some of the private schools, and that creates other issues, whether they're real or just perceived in a kid's mind, to play those schools and to talk about tradition, what PA's been able to do, and that swagger I mentioned a minute ago. When they step on the field, they feel they're already up 14-0 every time they step on the field, just over what they've been able to do. So that aspect's going to be tough. I know the coaches in our magazine voted Whitehall to finish 7th in the league, and yet they're pretty talented. It's a very tough 5A conference with Pulaski Academy and Little Rock Christian. Then you throw in Watson Chapel, who won the 5A South last year, Whitehall, who's 2 years removed from a conference title. And makes it a lot tougher, and travel-wise, I know it's not horrible, but still, the level of competition is pretty good. And I think a change of offense, too. Some of those teams from a PA and Little Rock Christian, what they present, they may not found week in, week out in the 5A South. And no offense, Coach Mondon to the South, but some really good players there. But, man, when they go to spreading the ball like they do at PA and Little Rock Christian, and they're going to put a Division I athlete back there in Justice Hill running the ball, it creates a whole nother dynamic.
Who are the kickoff classes for this area this year?
Yeah. Our kickoff week, we're officially announcing it Monday. And our kickoff is, I don't know any of the others around here. I can tell you ours, though, are going to be in North Little Rock and at SAU. Our South one's going to be at SAU, and then Little Rock's the other one. And we're going to have Traylon Burks from Warren, and they're on Saturday, August 25th, playing Batesville Southside, who won 10 games last year. And then at SAU, I mentioned Kyron Beatty from Foreman, a possible Division I player. He'll be playing in that one. Yes, Smackover. Anyone else? If not, I appreciate the opportunity. And if you got something, last year, I would always say this, if you got something to ask me that you didn't want to ask in public, you can ask it privately. And twice I was held up for over 30 minutes on how somebody at 2 different clubs about how people, boy, they did not like that AD and the coach at Arkansas. So this year I won't have those kind of things to answer after a show.
Thank you, Barry, and all great questions, and appreciate your participation there. Time for a commercial. Our touchdown sponsor this year was Simmons Bank. Field goal sponsors Reliance Bank, MK Distributors, and JRMC. Extra point sponsors Kelley and Stone, Arkansas Mill Supply, Edward Jones, Alan Frazier's group, State Farm Insurance, Kevin Bonnet, thank you, Kevin. Service Master by Smith, Shannon. Robert Thompson, our district governor-elect. We're very fortunate in the Rotary Club of West Pine Bluff to have an assistant governor that's over our district, about half of the state of Arkansas. And Robert Thompson, past president, past assistant governor, will be the president of that entire district next year. And Robert, we're very proud of you. First down sponsors were David Sims, Scott Robinson, Taylor and Linda Lewis Eubank, and the Pine Bluff Jefferson County Library System. We are appreciative once again of the media. Joe Dempsey Communication. Joe just had a back surgery and he wasn't able to be, he called himself in prime time today, but he was involved in several of the email developments that you received. Pine Bluff Commercial, always very supportive of our club. We talked about West Moore, KLRT 16 and the Source 93.3. Randy Kelley, UAPB, Bluff City Radio, Greg, thank you for being here. Larry Potter, KATV, always a big supporter of all of our sports here in town. Coaches, we appreciate you. We know the impact that you have on these young men's lives. And I'm not sure, Barry kind of waffled there, whether or not it's a lucrative field to be in, or whether it's mostly from your heart. But we do appreciate all that you do, taking care of those boys, being competitive, putting good values in them, and we wish you all very much success. Okay, we're going to have a drawing. Gracious enough for one of Hooten'S magazines. Barry was gracious enough to come down with one of those this year. They retail for $16.99, a bargain in itself, but somebody will get to go home with a fresh copy. Okay, how about the last 4 digits, 3095. 3095. Fantastic. Okay, we did say if we had a little bit of time, I would very much appreciate the schools that we've got in attendance, representative coming forward and introducing themselves and who they might have with them, and if they've got some brief remarks to make about their program or a rebuttal of a prediction or whatever, to do that at the same time. This is going to be in alphabetical order by the school, not necessarily by the school that came the furthest, but Camden Fairview.
Jake Mungan, head football coach. With me today is our athletic director at Camden Fairview, Ricky Tucker. Thank you for having us. Excited about the upcoming football season and look forward to a great year. Thank you.
Coaches, please, sometime during the season or after whatever, tell your other coaches in the area that we've got a pretty neat program. We hope you enjoy it, but we hope we could expand on it as well. From Dalloway High School.
Good afternoon. We enjoyed Alton Murphy, athletic director of Dalloway. We're going to have a good year this year, I feel. We got a new coach, Martise Henry. We have 50-plus kids out. We have a new sense of energy and direction, and we still have the blueprint. So we're looking forward to having a good season. Our first game is August the 20th against Little Rock McClellan in the 103.7 Kickoff Classic. Once again, we're trying to bring it back. Thanks.
You also got a little bit of a facelift on that field that I played on back in 19-something, yeah. Okay, did Max Pennington, did not make it? Okay, England High School.
Just wanted to say thank you to the West Pine Bluff Rotary Club and specifically to Mr. Roy Farrell for allowing us to come here and represent England High School. My name is Andrew Robertson. I'm the new athletic director at England High School and the head football coach. And we're really looking forward to this year. This is Adam Hargrave, our defensive coordinator. He's going into his second year. We've got a lot of work on, but we've got a lot of kids out. We've got in between 30 and 35 student athletes out. They're working hard. We're running bus routes in the summer to bring the kids to football practice, make sure they're getting where they need to be and learning what they need to learn. And we just wanted to say thank you for allowing us to represent. Our first game is against Desart on August 21st. Also the 103.7 Classic kickoff at War Memorial, and we're looking forward to it. Thanks for having us.
Pine Bluff High School, Coach Bowling.
I'm gonna go right here to save time. Y'all can hear me on loud. Bobby Bowling, I've got Jamal Foote, defensive end. Is he not a good-looking young man? Looks sharp. I don't know what Barry's smoking, but we are not the #1 ranked team in the state. We are far from it. Hopefully by the middle of November, we'll be a decent football team, but they're on something to do.
Right, from Rising, Coach Toddy.
Clay Toddy, Rising, Stan Sadler, he's a longtime statistician there. Dad owned the papers and he owns the papers, so he knows Wildcat history for years and years. Harold Wilson, another football supporter and president of our school board. We got 42 out, good number. We're excited about the year. We'll play 4 dice in 43 days, 7 hours.
Coach Dutton, Watson Chapel.
Coach Dutton, head coach of Boston Chapel. I've got here my athletics trainer, Scott Young, and you talking about Barry, you're talking about safety. Our school hired an athletic trainer last year, and very happy to have him. Excited about him. He did an awesome job last year for us, and it just takes a lot off of us as coaches, especially on the serious injuries. And so definitely thank you, Scott. Definitely thank you to our school board, Mr. Alan Frazier, for making that happen. Also got new assistant coach here is Coach Fox. And so, our first game is August 20th against Nashville. Hey, it's not long. It's not long away. So, our kids working hard, doing good. And also, definitely always enjoy this. Thank you all very much.
From Woodlawn High School, Coach Barbary.
With me, Michael Anderson, my offensive and defensive line coach. As Barry mentioned earlier, we're doing something a little bit different this year. We're involved with the A-Man. I've been on the phone from people from Louisiana, Oklahoma, to last night at 1 o'clock in the morning to a guy in Northern California. We want to be as best prepared as we can. It's a fast-paced game. We're going to cut the field down. Our numbers have not been where they need to be, but if we can get some excitement back in the community, get these young men out to play multiple sports, and come together as a community and have some fun, and bring back football in South Arkansas. Bring it back to these little schools. It's going to be a tremendous time. We're playing Augusta, first game. If you're not around or you can be there, we want everybody to come out and check us out, and I appreciate it.
UA Monticello.
I'm Brandon Bailey. I'm here with our defensive coordinator, Darren Drago. I got a little bit lucky today. Our head coach is on vacation, so I got to tag along. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. We're excited about what's going on. Coach Drago runs our weight room. We got about 80% of our kids here for the summertime, which is more than normal, so that's going to be big for us. Just hired a new D-line coach that we're excited about. Alluded to us being good on offense in the past, lose a big receiver, but we do have a quarterback coming back. Really excited about that. And excited about taking steps forward defensively and hopefully, get over that hump and become a winning program here in the Great American. So thankful to be here and thanks for having us.
Yeah, I kind of noticed that offense being really good and not much mention about the defense for you defense coordinators. Putting you on the spot. UAPB, Coach Thomas?
I'm going to save my voice to August the 4th because it's going to be a lot of screaming. But Cedric Thomas, new head football coach, Arkansas at Pine Bluff. My defensive coordinator, Warren Navarro. Offensive coordinator, Jermaine Gales. And, first off, it's a blessing, really to be able to come and fellowship with you guys on this evening. I see my guys from Simmons. Once again, thank you, for the improvement of my school. I'm a graduate and alum of the great institution that 20 years later that I got a chance to be the face of. So that's really a blessing. But the young man here, he got it right in Hooten'S and all other magazines. Yeah, we should be last. The litmus that they got is in the past. And in the last 5 years, we've been at the bottom. But I promise you, next year, if I'm at this event, we won't be last. Because we're changing the culture, we're changing the mindset, and we give these young brothers the opportunity to be able to think and process information off the field first. We're going to do it right in the classroom, we're going to do it right in the community, and then it's going to be a direct reflection to what's going to happen on Saturday, no matter who we line up. We're going to do it the right way. We're going to be structured, we're going to be disciplined, we're going to work our tails off, and we're going to roll our sleeves up, and we're going to be great young men first. And we know out that the wins and losses will take care of itself. But once again, on behalf of me and the staff, hey, I thank you, and go to the line.
Thank you, Coach. Touchdown sponsor, Simmons Bank. Field goal sponsors, Reliance Bank, MK Distributors, and JRMC. Extra Point, Kelley and Stone CPAs, Arkansas Mill Supply, Edward Jones, Alan Frazier's office, State Farm Insurance, Kevin Bonnett's office, Service Master by Smith, Robert Thompson, District Governor-elect, David Sims, Scott Robinson, Taylor and Linda Eubank, Pine Bluff Jefferson County Library System. Thank you very much for being here. The Rotary four-way test, of all of the things that we think, say, and do, number one, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? We are adjourned.